Hello, my friends. My name is Jack Ducard, and this is Sentinel Circle. Thank you for being here today. I appreciate it. Let's go ahead and fade right into our topic of today. We're going to talk about luxury beliefs, and this is not really a topic that I see talked about mostly. I've known about luxury beliefs for quite some time. My introduction of it was through a gentleman by the name of Rob Henderson. And I would strongly encourage everyone here to look up Rob Henderson, maybe buy his book, listen to, I think he's got a podcast. I hear him through other people's podcasts, and it's always a treat to hear him. And he's got a newsletter that he posts out there. Anyways, the reason why I listen to him specifically is Rob was adopted. And he lived in Northern California along the I-5 corridor. I think he lived in Redding, somewhere around Redding, if I recall correctly. Anyways, I am very familiar with that area. I know the area that he used to live in, that he grew up in. Anyways, he enlisted into the military, and then he went to Yale. On his GI Bill. He wasn't 9/11, I think. It doesn't matter. Anyways, he went to Yale on his GI Bill, and he really learned about. I shouldn't say learned. He kind of understood luxury beliefs and kind of coined the term luxury beliefs, as well as. The background behind it. So luxury beliefs, we're going to go kind of briefly over it real fast, and then we're going to talk about what people have as luxury beliefs and why they're considered luxury beliefs. So we're, again, Wikipedia, I know they're not really friendly on the right, and they already classify luxury belief as a right side of the aisle thing. I personally think that it's more of a uniform aspect. It can, both the left and the right can kind of learn from this. Simply because I would argue that luxury belief is more of an elitist viewpoint rather than a conservative or a liberal aspect. Anyways, so the term luxury belief characterizes ideas or opinions that confer status on the upper class at very little cost, while often inflicting costs on the lower classes. The phrase often references privileged individuals who are seen as disconnected from the experiences of the working class, impoverished, or marginalized people. Such privileged individuals supposedly hold political and social beliefs that signal their elite status. These beliefs, though putatively supporting the marginalized, allegedly have negative impacts on them. Okay, so basically what this is saying is a luxury belief is an idea that the elite has that can harm the poor and the working classes. Again, the theory it used to be that the elite would have products to show their elite natures, such as Dolce Gabbana bags or something like that. I don't know. Like Rolexes, having a Rolex. And now that it's kind of accessible to fairly everybody, everybody, more the middle class than anything. It's at a point now where, they have to, there's nothing that you can own that signals your entrance into the elite. So therefore you have to have these ideas, that's at least the theory from my understanding. I could be wrong. But I've been listening to Rob Henderson for quite some time. So, I think I got a good grasp on it, but maybe he would take me to school on it. Anyways, let's keep going on here. Exactly what counts as a luxury belief is not always consistent and may vary from person to person, and that term in general is considered to be controversial, right? The term is a neologism. Yeah, neologism coined by social commentator Rob Henderson in 2019. It describes what some allege is a modern trend among mainly affluent Americans to use their beliefs as a way to display their social status. However, recognition of the phenomenon in sociology predates the term itself. In his video opinion piece for the New York Times, Rob Henderson defined luxury beliefs as ideas held by privileged people that make them look good but actually harm the marginalized. So a couple that come to my mind, you know what? Let's hold off on that. There's some that come to my mind, but I got another article here that we're going to cover. It's titled 6 Examples of Luxury Beliefs. We'll go through my examples at that point. Anyways, however, recognition of the phenomena in sociology predates the term itself. I already read this. Pardon me. He compares luxury beliefs with virtue signaling and cites defund the police as a classic luxury belief, along with his other examples of decriminalizing drugs, getting rid of the SAT, and rejecting marriage. So I know that one of those, decriminalizing drugs, would kind of offend the libertarians. The rest of them have been kind of held by the left. So, again, that's why I said it's more of a, an elite versus working and poor classes versus like left v right, So let's continue on here. So, details. Doug Lemov and co-authors in 2023 described Henderson's concept of luxury beliefs as an idea that confers social status on people who hold it, but injure others in its practical consequences. So that's really what it boils down to, and that's kind of the part that I wanted to get to. We'll finish up the detail section, and then we'll go on to the next article. I don't want this video to be astronomically long, covering 3 articles. Matthew Goodwin, professor of political science at the University of Kent, further argued in 2023 that such beliefs are held by people who no longer measure somebody's status or moral worth through money, estates, titles, or education, but through the new lens of ideas and beliefs. And that's really what this boils down to, is credential. We've shown that things like money is pointless, estates, titles. It's a way to show your elite status without owning those things. And with education, because any idiot can get into college these days, that's kind of the other aspect too. Credentialism has really dropped the floor on what a piece of paper actually has in terms of weight. So again, these ideas, if you start espouting them, people will think that you're, you're smart, you're intelligent, you're elite in a way. But without really thinking about the consequences of those actions and ideas, hence the term, ideas so dangerous that only an intellectual can have, thanks to, I can't think of the economist's name right now. Anyways, it's the famous economist. I can't think of his name all of a sudden. It fleeted out of my mind. All right, let's continue on. Some have argued that the belief that marriage and the nuclear family are no better than alternative family arrangements is a luxury belief, since there's evidence that family instability, which is equated to non-nuclear families, according to at least some who argue in favor of the term, is associated with poor outcomes for children. Holding such beliefs, according to proponents of the concept, is deemed fashionable for elites, but the actual effects on those involved, such as children experiencing family instability, are harmful. So how I was introduced to this idea was more the intellectual elite sits there and says that, marriage is an archaic social contract. or construct. Meanwhile, they're getting married and they're staying together in their marriages, right? But the people that actually are going through it, they've shown time and time again that their outcomes are not good at all. Especially when the father's not in the house. And we're gonna do a video in the future about the consequences of fatherlessness in the home. Simply because I believe heavily that, a mother and the father in the child's life, and I mean physically in the child's life, is second to none. Holding such beliefs, according to proponents of the concept, is deemed fashionable for elites, but the actual effects on those involved, such as the children experiencing family instability, are harmful. Henderson notes the outcomes such as rates of incarceration, college degree attainment, and substance abuse are more strongly correlated with children not living with both biological parents than with poverty. Poor outcomes are more likely for children without both parents, especially for foster children, than for children in poverty but with both parents. And again, this is inherently true. And we just did a video. Is titled the article was titled "Men Who Needs Them," and they showed that the guy said that poverty was more indicative of a child's not succeeding versus a lack of a father, and the dude was just completely insane, basically. I'll probably link the video in the description of this video. We got to start. What we got to do in these videos is we got to start connecting the dots here, because I'm seeing, the more I do this, the more I'm seeing. It's like what George Lucas says. It's like poetry. It rhymes, basically. It's all connected. The problem is in order to make those connections, videos have to be almost 24 hours long. Anyways, okay, so let's go ahead and go to this next article that I have here. It says 6 examples of luxury beliefs. I'm sorry about that. I had a technical glitch and all of a sudden my camera froze. I don't know what the heck happened there. That was odd. Anyways, so we have an article by Brad Vaughn of 6 examples of luxury beliefs, and we're gonna just go through them quickly. We're not gonna really hang out on this article. So the first one is radical environmentalism. Excuse me. This encompasses beliefs that advocate for extreme measures to combat climate change, such as the complete cessation of fossil fuel used within a very short time frame, or the significant reduction of human populations to decrease carbon footprints. And this is one of those things that I always come to when people talk about the reduction of the human population. Which population are you going to reduce? And I find it funny how they always say that, well, the wealthy shouldn't be reduced because they actually contribute something. And the one thing that I instantly think of is I don't see those people really on the production line or out in the field working on equipment like I do, or, doing that kind of stuff. If anything, all they do all day is, dictate. I'm not saying that what they do does not really have an impact on my life. It's just more, it's always, these people always think that, if we got to get rid of the useless feeders, or useless eaters, I should say. And my whole point is, okay, we'll define a useless eater, and again, they're talking about like, population control and all that stuff, which we've shown time and time again that population control does not work, and it actually causes an extreme situation, i.e. China. I haven't had my morning coffee. Leave me alone. While the underlying concern for the environment is valid and necessary, the extremity of some proposed solutions often fail to consider the immediate practical implications for the majority of the global population. For instance, the rapid elimination of fossil fuels without viable and accessible alternatives could lead to economic collapse in regions dependent on these industries for employment. So let's finish this, and then I'll go to what my mind immediately went to. Moreover, such drastic measures may not account for the needs of developing countries where access to clean energy is limited. The luxury of advocating for radical environmentalism is thus characterized by a detachment from the immediate economic and practical realities faced by less affluent individuals and communities. So my immediate thought was, okay, we get rid of fossil fuel. How are you going to till the fields? How are you going to plant the crops? How are you going to harvest the crops? You know, because like, we're going through the whole immigration thing right now, and people are always saying, well, who's going to pick the crops? Okay, well, yes, we have people picking crops, but we also have machines picking crops too. You know, we have machines picking staple foods like cereals and, sorry, there's a flood warning in my area right now. The rain has been just crazy this past night. But what machines are you going to use to harvest those crops? The, not pesticides, but, fertilizers use, fossil fuels as well. So, the farming boom that we had over the past several years is going to go away. So that's always what comes to my mind when these people, the whole stop oil people, they have no idea how much oil is needed to make everything that they use, everything that they enjoy. I mean, there was the whole, I don't need oil, I take the bus. Well, the bus needs oil. The bus needs gas. Even if it's run on electricity, the electric plant needs oil. Even if it runs on coal, it needs oil. So, these people are so sheltered from society as a whole that they have no idea that, you need these things. Even for clean energy, you still need oil. You still need lubricants. You still need a lot of these things. It's not going to come out of the thin sky. Okay, so the next one, defunding the police. And again, I don't mean this in a political aspect, okay? I'm sorry that this is getting a little political even for my taste, but there's a point to all this. Defunding the police. The call to defund the police emerged from social movements promoting police reform following high-profile cases of police brutality. So I actually spoke to some defund the police individuals quite a while ago, and when the problem with the defund the police movement is like not everybody, but a lot of them don't really understand that words have meaning. They sit there and think that, oh, well, when you defund the police, you're really trying to reform it, and it's like, no, defund the police really means removing money from their budgets. That the removal of that money is going to have some kind of impact. And I know that their counter to that is to have like a social worker there or whatever, which I'm all for the experiment. If departments want to experiment with having a social worker on site during a crisis or whatever, because police, they don't have certain skills to assist individuals, and having a police officer with a uniform and a weapon on them, it can escalate a situation rather than de-escalate a situation. I know that's very controversial to say. My point here is that we live in a country where we are allowed to experiment with different projects and come up with something that's a lot better. I mean, I'm sure everyone's heard the term, the laboratories of freedom or the laboratories of liberty, one of the two. That was the whole point of our system, was to be able to experiment and try things. And, it's 50 different states rather than one country, even though we have one flag out there. Anyways, point being is that, I understand where this is coming from, but, at the same time, I know that a lot of people, when they sit there and really shout defund the police, they don't really mean that. And the problem is defund the police really does mean defund the police. And I know that I rag on police officers. I'm not anti-cop, though. I'm anti-corruption. There's a very big difference between the two. I do believe that, police officers, when they actually do the work, they do serve a purpose in our society. Being able to find serious criminals who do serious harm, that is an aspect of our society that needs to be done, and police officers fill that niche. But at the same time, though, there's so many stories where, police don't lift a finger, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That has caused problems as well. Okay, so let's continue on. Contemporary beliefs about marriage and the nuclear family, and this is the main one I wanted to hit on. Contemporary beliefs challenging the traditional models of marriage and the nuclear family often reflect luxury beliefs. Perhaps someone says that marriage is an outdated institution or promotes polyamory or open relationships as equally valid or preferable alternatives to marriage. Some people claim the nuclear family is not necessary for raising children, which that right there is the luxury belief. The people that advocate for that, they have a stable marriage, stable family. They can afford childcare and all that stuff. Whereas the people that, are really affected by divorced family, they can't afford like childcare. Childcare is astronomically expensive these days. And I do firmly believe that the breakdown of the nuclear family is the main reason why a lot of issues that we're having today is creeping up. Excuse me. So, some people claim, or pardon me, I already read that. Advocates of these beliefs want to deconstruct traditional institutions in favor of more fluid, individualized approaches to relationships and family law. And so the good question is, at what point does the whole system fall apart? Because the system needs a strong foundation, and nothing stronger than the nuclear family. I would go so far as to say that it's not just the nuclear family, but extended family as well. Grandparents, parents, aunts, uncles, all that stuff is the foundation of the United States, is the foundation of society as itself. I know that some people may slightly disagree in saying that, nuclear family is man, women, and the children. And, I mean, at the very bare minimum, I would say yes. But having a generational household is perfectly okay. And like I said, in some cases, it might actually be stronger because it has those influences in the house, having the strong men, the very feminine women, all that stuff would severely impact, severely as in, good in this case, but it's a strong impact on children, whereas, single mother households, specifically single mother households, are doing absolutely the worst. But again, family courts tend to side with the mother for whatever reason. I don't know why. Maybe it's, the woman should be with the kids and all that stuff, but there's a point where a father needs to come into a child's life. Anyways, like I said, I could go on and on and on about these things. I got another video coming up about it. So, oops, sorry, did not mean to hit the mic. Excuse me. Careerism. Careerism is the belief that excuse me, should prioritize their career over other aspects of life. From this perspective, people should pursue personal advancement and success as the ultimate goals. Such careerism exemplifies a luxury belief. And this is interesting. I never really thought of this, but this makes a good point. Is if you're going to be stuck in, like the same position day in, day out, then what does it matter? But for people that, again, are already elite in their careers and stuff, by focusing on their career, yeah, they're going to, be vice president someday, So yeah, I can see how this one would be. We're going to actually read this one fully. First, it presupposes access to career opportunities and pathways not universally available to others. The belief highlights a divide between those with the resources, education, and network to climb the career ladder, and those for whom such opportunities are out of reach. Second, careerism underestimates the value of work-life balance, community involvement, and the non-material aspects of life that contribute to well-being. For individuals in high socioeconomic brackets, prioritizing a career above all else seems like a feasible and rewarding choice. However, this perspective does not resonate with or is not practical for everyone, especially those who value or depend on strong family and group ties. So, in my industry, like, my company's a very flat company, and most of the companies that I worked for were very flat companies. There was only like 5 positions between myself and the CEO. Advancement was not going to happen. Unless, the manager quit, which, manager turnover was kind of rampant. But then, like, we had an understanding that once you're in a management position, you're getting pressure from both sides. You're getting pressure from the technicians up it's more like this, technicians up and the management from above down. And it's a very hard position to be in. Now, the average length of time in that managerial position was about 1 year. So if you got that position, it was a 1 year clock, basically, before you got removed for whatever reason. You had numbers to meet, and if you did well, okay, you sat there for a long time. And then, of course, you got the regional managers, which there's only 5 of them, and good luck getting a position like that. So that's basically my issue here is, when I was younger, I wanted to put as much work in as I could, make my bona fides, and, be in a position where I was pretty okay. And I found out around COVID that was not really a feasible belief. COVID kind of changed that. And that's, and when I get to number 4, that's immediately what I think of as COVID, because, the non-essential people, God, I could talk on and on about COVID and work, but, everybody went to go work from home. For me, COVID was another Tuesday. I was doing literally the exact same thing I was doing before COVID, and I did the exact same thing after COVID. But people got to work from home. The problem was the people that didn't have the ability to work from home, they got laid off, and they did not have an income. I know, like, everybody got like stimmy checks, but there were a lot of people that I knew that didn't get the stimmy checks for whatever reason. And I think a lot of people, because I heard people saying, "Oh, you should, you stay at home, you shouldn't work," except, well, people got to eat. Nobody was getting free food. So that to me was like a luxury belief. A lot of people still had to work. A lot of people could not afford to stay at home, and the people that could afford to stay at home and work, they worked in positions that I would argue were not essential. The essential people were the people, like firefighters, EMTs, doctors, that kind of stuff. I was designated as an essential worker. I was given like a little badge and a letter that said that, if in case I got pulled over, because I lived in California, there was quarantines and, everybody was at home and I was still working, and I got stopped many times saying I shouldn't be out in the streets, blah, blah, blah. And I had to show my letter, say, no, I am essential for, I was classed as a tier 2 essential employee. So tier 1 is like in a disaster situation. Tier 1 is like your first responders, right? The people that are there to get, people out of danger, all that stuff. Tier 2 are those who are there to get commerce back up and working. So, example would be, an ATM technician, network technician, which again, I kind of was that. I wasn't qualified to work on a lot of things, but I could work on like network switches and stuff like that. I was basically responsible for almost half of the economy in the area that I was living at in California. Just by myself. Like, that's how important my position was. But yeah, after the area was deemed safe, then, I would go in and do that stuff. And, my previous company, we actually had an emergency response team. So if like a hurricane hit an area, the emergency response team would be deployed from all around the country to get things like ATMs, cash registers, all that kind of stuff working and going, so that way people could buy food and stuff. Because if the cash registers don't work and they don't connect to the network, commerce can't happen, at least with the major stores. And then you have a serious freaking problem. So, in a situation like that, we would all get shipped out, and we would go into the major cities first and start working our way out and fixing things. And it was a feat. It was a massive feat of logistics to get a city working again. But like, for example, my job depends on electricity. So in my view, an electrician and any individual who works on the power grid is more important than I am, because if those guys can't do their job, then I sure as crap can't do mine. Plumbing, same situation. So again, a lot of those people, they had to work during COVID. They put their lives on the line. If you believe that in COVID, the way that certain people believe, they put their lives on the line every single day. But those people never yelled at me. It was always the overweight, privileged women that would yell at me about the masks and all that stuff. So you know what? Forget them. That's my diatribe on COVID. COVID sucked, but for other reasons. Anyways, let's continue on because this is starting to get long. Beliefs about college. The belief that a traditional 4-year degree is the only path to success is an example of a luxury belief, and I agree wholeheartedly on this one. This view stresses the importance of higher education as a prerequisite for a successful career and societal respect. And that's... People forget about the societal respect aspect of a 4-year degree. I think if people had approached it like that, then the degree would be a little bit more... It would be looked at differently, because it's obvious that people who went to a 4-year institution did not get an education. I will attest to that. The education that I got is colleges are basically adult daycares at this point. And honestly, corporate jobs at this point are adult daycares. Like, really, all that we're going through right now is basically adult daycare and kindergarten. That's it. With the social structure of high school mixed in there. Anyways, unfortunately, it overlooks the value of vocational training, apprenticeships, and other forms of education. And honestly, like, it bothers me that people like plumbers and electricians are looked down upon in society because they're the ones that keep society going. You know, in my perfect society, people who work as an electrician, as a plumber, those people would be highly praised in a society. You know, not to say that a doctor doesn't contribute. You know, a medical doctor does save lives, right? But, you know, again, that's, you know, lack of plumbing also saves lives. Electricity also saves lives. A doctor can't do his job without electricity. You know what I mean? So it really, like, it's all an interconnected web. It's not one job is more important than another. You know, there are certain jobs that we could probably do without. You know, I'm thinking of a couple of them right now, specifically related to marketing, but you know, like I said, I'm not going to sit there and say that like any job is more or less important. That's not my place in society. You know, but I will say that, you know, a lot of people just have no idea how society really runs, and it's horrifying. Okay, so we will go on to the last one. This one's the one that really drives me nuts. Healthy at every size, which this is an older article because, 2024, because ever since Ozempic hit the market and all the celebrities who are fat saying, oh, healthy at every size, have you noticed that they all got thin? Yeah. Well, as soon as Ozempic hit the market, they all got pretty freaking thin. But health at every size, that's fat acceptance movement. We all know that one. So those are 6 immediate examples of luxury beliefs that I think everybody can agree on. There's a lot of others, but these are just kind of like the most well-known. So we're going to go ahead and look at this last article on Rob Henderson's newsletter here. Luxury beliefs are status symbols. Okay, so we'll start here. Let's start with a question. What do top hats and defund the police have in common? He talks about his unusual background, which, you know, we already kind of know. He says here he's a doctoral candidate in psychology at Cambridge and a faculty fellow at the University of Austin. Interesting. So he's here in Texas. Before this, I studied psychology in Yale as an undergraduate, but before entering those universities, my life was different. He talks about growing up in foster homes in LA and all over California. He enlisted. He attended the Yale at GI Bill and talks about his experiences at Yale. If you guys want to go into his background, I would strongly encourage it. His background is very interesting. It kind of reminds me of... I can't think of the guy's name. It's Johnny something. The doctor, he's a Navy SEAL, and a doctor, and an astronaut. You know, one of those way, way, way high, high achievers. You know, he's kind of like that guy. Which, you know, nothing wrong with high achievers. I respect them. As long as they worked hard to get to where they're at, I immensely respect them. I can't remember the guy's last name, though. It's Johnny something. I know that much. But yeah, he's an astronaut now. So right here, throughout my experiences traveling wow, let me try that again. Throughout my experiences traveling along the class ladder, I made a discovery. Luxury beliefs have to a large extent replaced luxury goods. Luxury beliefs are ideas and opinions that confer status on the upper class while often inflicting costs on the lower class, which we've already talked about. My camera froze again. I sincerely apologize. So there was a couple of quotes that I wanted to bring up here. So, these books here, Thorsten Veblen, The Theory of the Leisure Class. He talks about in this book, economic capital was often converted into cultural capital. So basically saying that if you got a lot of money, then, you know, you want to convert that over to what they call cultural capital, which is, you know, your place in high society, basically. It says here, once our basic physical and material needs are met, people can then spend more time cultivating what Bourdieu called a disposition of mind and body in the form of intricate and expensive taste and habit that the upper class uses to obtain distinction. Corresponding with the sociological observations, the biologist Azmat Zahavi proposed that animals evolve certain displays, traits, and behaviors because they are so physically costly. So basically, it's what it boils down to is it's the show of excess. You know, if you have excess, that means that you're doing pretty well for yourself and you become more desirable, right? And that's probably what's going on here. In fact, they give a good example here. Many people are familiar with the example of the peacock's tail. Only a healthy bird is capable of growing such plumage while managing to evade predators. A lesser known example is the behavior of the African gazelle. When these animals spot a predator, the healthy adult gazelle often engages in what is called strutting. They repeatedly jump as high as they can, sprinting vertically into the air with all 4 feet raised. That's interesting. I did not know that. This signal, the signal this sends to predators is essentially, I'm so fit that I can afford to expend valuable energy to show you how strong and robust I am compared with the other gazelles. The predators then direct their attention to less lively and energetic targets. So he's basically comparing luxury beliefs to like an animal who is showing off their energy and robustness to a predator, which is very fascinating. I never thought of that. It says here, so for humans, top hats and designer handbags are costly signals of economic capacities. For gazelles, strutting is a costly signal of physical capacity. Animals, basically they're saying that animals do this physically. Affluent humans often do it economically and culturally with their status symbols. And it's been known in the past that the one that holds the land can grow the most crop, therefore they have the most excess. It's basically what it boils down to is it's excess. You know, the person who can generate the most economic excess is basically the most desirable. You know, same thing with power. You know, you have the most excess. You can show off the most power to your enemies. I guess it would be the same principle. You know, it's like having the largest army would, in a way, stop the war before it even started. You know, and having the economic access to build the largest military can do that. And that's why we're in the position that we're in now. Happy birthday, America, by the way. This is very interesting, but he kind of goes into the history of you know, economic and cultural excess and how it leads into the current luxury beliefs that we have today. I guess we're past the part where economic beliefs are a thing, because again, anybody can access them with enough time. And you now have the luxury beliefs, because again, it's a way to signal to people that you have enough excess that these things aren't of consequence to you. Anyways, so we're gonna just go ahead and end it here, because this article goes on and on and on and on and on. So we'll come back with your comments and final thoughts on luxury beliefs. But again, this was all very interesting. I would encourage everybody to go through what I provide in the description, and go ahead and really learn about luxury beliefs, especially from Rob Henderson, because I think he's a pioneer in it. And it's very interesting to understand about luxury beliefs, and we will definitely bring up luxury beliefs as time goes on. And it's also important to be able to identify luxury beliefs, because once you can identify them, then you instantly know, okay, I'm not paying attention to this. This is just a peacock flapping its wings, or what, their feathers, showing off their feathers. Same principle. Anyways, we'll be right back. Thank you very much. Hello, my friends. Jack Descartes here once again. Thank you for watching this video. We appreciate it. I just would like to take a few moments of your time. Right now, we are currently raising money to host a website. We have Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, as well as a Patreon, in case you'd like to donate once or you'd like to give a continued donation. The donation on the Patreon is only $3 a month. Cash App, Venmo, and PayPal, you can donate however much you want. There is no obligation. I will continue to try to provide as much content for free as possible. Once the website is up, we will use that as a hub for all Sentinel Circle related activities, including local meetups, as well as online meetups, online discussions, and videos. So again, if you could go and donate to either Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, or Patreon, all the links are in the description. We appreciate everything you have done for us. And if you can't donate, we still ask that you like, subscribe, and share. All these activities do help, even in the most insignificant ways. If you do donate, you will be immortalized in our videos and the website. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Now back to our scheduled program. And we're back. Thank you for coming back. I appreciate it. And we're going to read your comments next. So first comment is from The Collapse of Civilization. Yikes. Sorry to hear about your story. It's crazy and disturbing to think about how easily someone else can destroy everything. Ugh. This was, he watched my intro video. And this is a good point. It's horrifying to think that someone could just walk right in, destroy everything you worked so hard for, and then walk out as if nothing happened. And my story is kind of, well, I shouldn't say my story. That kind of story is kind of a metaphor for, well, metaphor is not really a good word. It would be allegory, but it's an allegory of society as a whole. We've worked so hard to build this, and we got a couple people coming in and wrecking everything to the point where society's on the verge of collapse. It's really horrifying to think about how easy, how precarious everything is, how delicate the balance is, and one push, the Joker once said, all it takes is a little push. How one push can really just destabilize everything. Anyways, thank you, Collapse of Civilization. I appreciate it. Nick, it's always good to hear from Nick. I think it's more like some people need that piece of paper from the institution to affirm that they learned taught substance. Multifaceted issue we have, and I would love to do a video coming up on credentialism. I really do think that credentialism really has destroyed the person's ability to just go and prove themselves. I mean, we talk about, well, you got to go out, work hard, and you'll succeed. And it's like, define working hard at this point, because not everybody can do everything, and like, for example, in my job, I have to take tests every once in a while. But I don't, I learn better out in the field when I'm touching things, when I'm feeling things, when I'm tasting things. That's a joke, by the way. I don't go and taste things unless it's food. Food's good. But I don't need a piece of paper to show that I know something. You know what I mean? Really, all that piece of paper is it's to show others that you kind of know what you're talking about. But that piece of paper is only as good as the person giving the test. And the problem is like, a lot of the tests that I take are so easy. Everyone sits there and says that I'm an expert in what I do, and it's like, really not. I mean, maybe in the grand scheme of things, like if you send someone who doesn't know what they're doing to work on a machine that I work on, then yeah, it seems like I'm an expert, but I'm nowhere close to an expert. Not even remotely close. Like, I don't know. Like, I understand where Nick's coming from with it. Having a piece of paper to show that you know something is important, I feel. But at the same time, I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, I'd love to do a video on it. Because I think having a piece of paper to show that you know something is kind of pointless. But at the same time, I would argue that you should have the right piece of paper. And the problem is nobody knows what the right piece of paper is these days. So, a good comment, Nick. Thank you. I appreciate it. Sam. Good to hear from Sam, as always. Physical and emotional connection and attachment is literally a need for all of humankind. The poor men who are buying these products are not having any of their needs met. He's talking about the Sydney Sweeney bath soap in this case. That's the problem. It's the same reason I've developed an aversion to physical touch. Most men aren't as defiant as me, so they spiral like this. Good work, Jack. Okay, so since this comment came out, we did the update video, which apparently the soap sold out in a couple seconds, which that's horrifying. 5,000 bars of soap gone like that. And from what it sounds like scalpers got to it mostly. I really hope the scalpers get hosed, but based on what I'm seeing right now, the scalpers are making bank. And that's what is upsetting me is the scalpers got rich off of Sydney Sweeney's bathwater soap. There's oh God, how do I want to say this? The wrong people won. That's how I'm gonna say it. The wrong people won. Sydney Sweeney got her advertisement. Dr. Squanch got their advertisement. The scalpers made their money. The only people that lost are the sad, pathetic men who bought the soap. And I'm going to say sad and pathetic men because they are so alone that they would rather have soap in theoretical bathwater, because again, we don't know if her bathwater was actually used in that situation. We don't know. But it's a very, very sad world that we live in currently. And again, thank you, Sam, for that comment. And it says here from Singletown on Rumble, at the age of 32, I was having children and was in a long-term relationship. Thank you very much, Singletown. And I'm very sympathetic to your situation. I really am. Anyways, another one from Swatchaglan. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm sorry. If everything's barred behind a monetary system, then it'll always seem impossible. And that was the whole talk about alternative societies. Um, I how do I want to approach this? A monetary system is just a better way to trade. Rather than trying to trade, because the problem with a trade or a barter system, and this is how man has traded before a monetary system. The question then becomes, okay, so what is something worth? And this is basically how the first market's set up. And I'm kind of digging into my anthropology studies to get to this. So give me a bit. But basically, when you, okay, let's say I have 10 oranges and this guy has 10 apples. Okay. I want to trade oranges for apples. Okay. So what is everything worth? As far as he's concerned, I just have 10 oranges, but the oranges to me, if I grew them and cultivated, that's years of building an orchard and all that stuff, right? Now let's say he feels that my 10 oranges are only worth 5 of his apples, right? Then another guy with 20 apples comes along and says, okay, well, I'll give you 10 apples for your 10 oranges, even though it's the same apple. You know what I mean? Everybody has a price, and that's where the monetary system comes in, is like we dictate by agreement, okay, an apple is worth $1 a pound, okay, and then oranges are about $1.50 a pound, but that's it takes into account all the labor, all the land, all the water, all the fertilizer, pesticides, all that stuff, insurance, because, oranges are grown in places where, you get a bad harvest, you get some kind of disease, you lose it. There's so much that goes into making an orange for however much it is, and that's kind of where the monetary system comes in. Like, people forget that, a dollar is kind of like that agreed number that everything is going to have a value against. All that dollar is so that way we don't have to carry physical assets like gold, silver, platinum, whatever, salt. Like, there was that one show, it was, what was it, Jericho? I think it was Jericho, where they traded in salt after the nuclear bombs went off. All it is it's a pass through, a pass through to purchase things, because if you didn't have that pass through, okay, then what's worth what? Well, what it boils down to is, someone's going to want your stuff, and someone is always going to want to pay a little bit more for your stuff, And then, of course, like, especially in America's early days, and even during the Civil War, we ran into a situation where, every bank had their own money, and, they would only take certain currencies, and it was a mess. And, having the dollar kind of unified that whole system to prevent, a serious economic issue. Like I said, I know that a lot of people are frustrated with where things are at currently, but the problem is, and I'm going to challenge everyone to do this if they want to try, come up with a better system. I constantly hear, no, this won't work, no, that won't work, blah, 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 blah. Well, then if you think that all this stuff is not going to work, then come up with a better system. Let's talk about it. Let's debate it. But, everybody's so quick to say, no, that's not going to work. They don't really think about it, and that's very sad. But anyways, it was a good comment. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And that was the last comment. So let's go ahead and we're going to switch over to my handsome face here. So Luxury beliefs. This is going to be quick since this video's already long. Luxury beliefs, in my view, people need to understand the concept. Simply because once you understand the concept and you know what you're looking for, then you can better say, oh, that's a luxury belief. I shouldn't pay attention to it because that's just someone trying to show that they're wealthy or they're desirable or something. You know what I mean? We need to just take the luxury beliefs and just crumple them up and toss them out the window, because really they're causing a lot of problems. And you know, they are harming people in the process of that. You know, I've always considered, well, not considered, but I've always said that a luxury is when someone suffered in the process of it. You know, one of the comments on Rob Henderson's article that we read earlier, it said here, I'll just read it real fast. You might be interested to know that luxury goods like top hats did have detrimental effects on the working class. Hat making was dangerous to the craftsmen because of the use of mercury, but the practice was in demand for fashionable hats since the 17th century well into the 19th century. In the 19th century, a color called Schleen green or arsenic green was a popular pigment. The copper arsenic in the dye probably wouldn't kill you if you were just wearing a bright green gown, or at least kill you that quickly. The same couldn't be said for the workers manufacturing the fabric, who would come down with the terrible illness. So that's where the term Mad Hatter comes into play. You know, the people who make the hats really got sick. They fell apart. There was also the what was the term for the women who lost their jaws because they were licking the paintbrushes with the radioactive isotope to make the glowing watch hands? I can't remember. There's a specific term for those women, but those watches were also a luxury. I mean, granted, they were issued during World War II to pilots, but you know, being a pilot was, you know, a luxury in itself. You know, I mean, there were a lot of pilots that got there through hard work and dedication, but a lot of others got there through connections. I think George Herbert Walker Bush was a pilot during World War II, and not to say that it wasn't a dangerous job. All the jobs were dangerous, but like, you know, being a pilot compared to being an infantryman is kind of like, you know, it's two different worlds basically. You know, again, not to say that I'm not trying to downplay his contribution to the war effort. Everybody contributed to defeat Japan and Germany. It's just, you know, it's one of those things where, like, you know, someone's contributions are worth more than someone else's contributions. Anyways, my point being is that I don't like, I really think that everybody here should understand what a luxury belief is. Learn to identify it. Really learn to identify it. You know, hopefully those 6 examples will kind of give you an idea of what to look for. Those were kind of like the big ones, but there's smaller ones too. So, and then once you can pick them out and you know what you're looking for, then you can say, okay, your opinion is not worth my time, and you don't even have to waste your time arguing with that person. So hopefully that'll save you energy in the long run too. Anyways, I'm going to go. This video is exceedingly long, so we're going to end it here. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and sharing the videos. It's very appreciated. And I hope you have a great day, okay? Talk to you later.